Hello there. Let me check. Yeah, things are working. So, this is the first Wednesday stream I'm doing, and it's the first stream I'm doing revisiting an old webcomic of mine, Zamo the Destroyer. The one I've got here, this is from 2009. I just figured it would be, or 2007, pardon me. Thought it would be a more interesting first open than what we're working on today, which looks like that. So I did this comic from 2006 to 2009, and then it kind of fizzled out for a while. And then I had actually forgotten about the part that I'm going to be working on today because I let it slide for a while, right? And then I kind of was like, "Oh, I really need to start doing Zamo again, etc." And then what happened? So I just get rid of a notification on my laptop. What happened was, time goes by, and I guess in 2013 I had drawn, I think it's 8 pages in total. What was going to be like a reboot. I thought I was going to start doing the comic again. Let me just adjust this so we've got a little more space. I thought I would start doing the comic again, etc. But I'd had an idea of some things that could have happened in the ensuing 4 years. So Zamo narrates that. In the end, I ended up not starting it as a comic, but I started doing and I guess I was going to have these separate because every page has the Zamo the Destroyer and the copyright, which wouldn't make sense if I had intended it to be like a graphic novel. But anyways, we have, yeah, I think it's 8 pages that was going to reboot it. And you can see that I got it lettered. I got it drawn. I got it lettered. I'll hold this up to the camera so you can sort of see there's the faintest of non-photo blue pencils. The one I use now is a lot darker. So I've got like crazy bright lights on here. And I'm even there. I'm not entirely certain. Some of the frames will be kind of difficult to make out what they're supposed to be. Anyways, I ended up doing a podcast because Zama was based on an iguana I actually had back in the day, and I'm just going to start drawing while we're doing this. But I used to do like this cartoony voice for my actual iguana, and it was kind of a little bit nasally and kind of a little snarling as well. Anyways, I decided to use that voice and do some podcasts, like fictional. The premise of the podcast was that Zalma was doing this podcast to send to her friends back home in Colombia. It's for iguanas only, not any of us lesser non-iguana species. Um, anyways, so I hadn't. I'm just gonna just there. That's better. Now we can see what I'm doing. Um, anyways, so I did the podcast, and I had actually completely forgotten about this comic. And then I was doing some project planning for Noah's Archipelago, which is my current main, well, I don't know if I can say it's my current main cartoon project. It depends how you define cartoon. It's my current only webcomic project. Um, oh, yeah, I guess I'll explain too with this. Zamo was done as a webcomic back in the MySpace days. I used to post this on MySpace. Um, and this was at a time when I wrote for Discorder magazine which is associated with CITR Radio in Vancouver. And at some point, I think the editor was commenting about wanting more indie comics. I'm like, oh, I do a web comic, But I say web comic. I mean, I drew them all on paper. This is Bristol board. Sometimes I do remember I used to do the show with a dip pen at times, but usually it would be more like markers or fine liners or whatever. Um, anyways, so for a while, Zamo was actually published in Discorder magazine. Kind of if they had space to fill or whatever, I would kicked them a couple comics, and it was a weekly comic that I was posting. Anyways, like, what do I say to introduce a project that, probably nobody watching this will have ever heard of? Well, I guess it depends. If my brother watches this, then he probably remembers, like, "Oh, yeah, that dumb iguana thing you were doing." Um, but anyway, so the premise of it, we have Zamo here, and we're seeing Zamo kind of from the front view. Zamo is an iguana, which, as far as Zamo is concerned, is, God's chosen species. Um, he also fervently believed, and it was I had the character as a she because the actual iguana was a she, but it kind of doesn't really matter. Although I guess if you're somebody who's familiar with iguana behavior, probably pick up on the fact that Zamo was female. But anyways, because I used to have people comment all the time. It's like, oh, he and whatnot. It's like that, you know, whatever. It's a non-human species, it kinda doesn't matter, but, um, anyways, the iguana that Zom was based on was female, as it turned out, so I made, Zamo an actual female as well, um, but and I guess, well, I'm babbling. Oops, I should say 12. Um, the hints that Zamo is female would basically be the territorialism. Her pet human, Georgie, is human female, and um, if Zoma was a male iguana, I heard many stories of women who had pet iguanas. If it was a male, then the male would tend to view like, okay, I don't know what's wrong with this broad. She ain't green and she's kind of big and weird looking, but that's my woman. Like um and stories of like male iguanas like humping their female owners like arms and anyways, so whereas because that's how dudes relate to women, especially reptilian dudes, whereas female iguanas relate to other female iguanas in terms of um, territorialism, for the best nesting sites and all this. And the way Zamo interacted was always with Georgie in the comic was always kind of Zamo trying to take over Georgie's house and Zamo trying to dictate how Georgie used her space and all this sort of stuff, which would be um, signs that Zamo is is a female viewing Georgie as a competitor for nesting space or whatever. But kind of doesn't matter really, right? Anyways, so and now I don't even remember what I've already explained about this. So yeah, Georgie is the main human character, and Georgie is a professional painter. Zomo tended to always believe that Georgie didn't really have a job because she's just sitting around the house painting on canvases all day. Um, Anyways, I'll sort of say why I have little triangles here is where I feel like I've screwed up the lettering. So that was a common thing. And sometimes I would have like a whole word written up again up there, and then I would fix it in Photoshop. Anyways, so I'm kind of talking off the cuff here while trying to concentrate on the drawing. But Suzumo talking iguana. Some of you may notice a similarity in drawing style, like how I do the eyes and whatnot, with how I draw Ricky B, the rock and roll rat, which, I started drawing Ricky. I kind of didn't really think of that. And then I looked at some old Zomos. I'm like, oh, hey, I guess I have a style after all. Um, anyways, so the comic ran from, I think I may have actually started it in 2006. But basically, yeah, I don't wanna say heyday because it's not like this was a huge comic, but at the time that I was working the most on it was 2007 into 2008 a little bit, and then I had a few comics in 2009. That was kinda when I was getting involved in the music industry and whatnot, and my Industrial Noise, Project Maclu. Anyways, I didn't really have time for working on Zamo at that point. Um, okay, I'm just looking. Why is there a speech bubble? Because Georgie isn't actually. Yeah. Oh, I think that's supposed to be me. This is the funny thing. And again, I don't know how much it shows. It's like super faint, and I'm like trying to guess at what the hell I had drawn, a dozen years ago, more than that. Anyways, so why was I looking at this project? Kind of jumping all over the place, I guess. Um, so I was thinking last Wednesday, I was kind of brainstorming about projects and things I'd like to get done and whatnot. And it always kind of bugged me that I never did do a book of Zamo comics because that had been an intention of mine way back when. Um, but I hadn't gotten it done. I think in those days, well, I think you still had like Lulu was probably the main for self-publishing and whatnot. Uh, Anyways, I had never gotten around to doing a book for Zamo, and then it kind of bothered me that I hadn't, and yada yada yada. So when I was brainstorming about the Noah comic book and switching, I mean, I'm still doing web comics for Noah but I'm now drawing those with marker instead of doing them in Procreate on my iPad. And anyways, gonna be gradually shifting the focus of Noah's Archipelago to graphic novels. So um, I was thinking of books, I guess is the point of all that. And I happen to have a whole stack. Like I've got what I'm going to pull up is actually Ricky B. Rat, but I have a bunch. Yeah, can I zoom out enough? But like the Profolio books that I do, like them working on that I'm using to store, pages for Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat, the Ricky B Goes to Sea graphic novel. Anyways, I have a whole stack of them for Zommel as well. And then, of course, that being just the comics. And then with the podcasts, I have all the archives of the scripts for those and had sort of been thinking, oh, at some point I should also do a book of those. I do illustrations, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, so point is, I had those there, and I was like, I haven't looked at this comic in years. Well, maybe not, but hadn't really had a good look. So I had a look through. I was like, yeah, okay, there's a few stinkers that might just get memory hold, but overall, I think the comic's a lot better than I remembered it being. Um, so I was thinking, yeah, you know what? It's actually the 20th anniversary this year of when I started Zamo the Destroyer. So maybe I'll uh, get things together and over the summer prep it to do like an anthology or collection of the comic. Anyways, as I was looking through, I found these 8 pages. It was like, how long have I been going? Like 13 minutes now. It was a long-winded, rambling explanation of what we're doing here tonight. But anyways, I found this, which I remember that I was going to reboot it, but I think I guess I remembered that I didn't reboot the comic, so I forgot that I had drawn all this stuff. But uh, anyways, I found this, and there's like a little storyline as we go through because almost explaining what's been happening. So yeah, the lazy monkey who draws this comic. Gee, I wonder who that could be. Claims to have been busy or something for a while. I don't believe her personally, but there you have it. Um, so it's actually really funny because even in the next row of panels down, like the 2 panels, we're getting into stuff that was like my life in not so much 2013, but had been in like 2009. And so, it's like, you gotta be kidding. Um, but Anyways, that's kind of more things for me to know what the overall story is. But anyways, I'm thinking because I'm gonna do this Zamo book, it'd kind of be neat to put in a little it's not really an Easter egg, I guess, but like a postscript, and this would be the postscript for that book. And then I'll start looking when I have time. Probably in 2027, I would start going through all the scripts from uh, the podcast and starting to draw illustrations for those, like edit them down and whatnot. So that is that. Anyways, we got our first line through. Um, Now for 8, I'm guessing because I'm now going to be doing live streams every weeknight. So I'm going to take a wild guess that this is what I'm going to be working on. That I'll probably actually, well, we'll see. Definitely for the rest of April, I expect we will be inking this comic, unless it goes incredibly fast. But I would, Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat, and Miles Marov on Monday nights. Normally, I can ink about 2 pages in a stream, roughly speaking. And I have 4 lines of panels, and actually, no, yeah, that's about right because it's been about a quarter of an hour. So we're looking at an hour a page. So 8 pages is going to be what I'm working on Wednesday nights for the rest of the month. After that, we'll see. I might, if I have time to go through and have a look at the Zamo podcast scripts and just start like working on illustrations for those, maybe I will. But I kind of think that probably it's going to be we work on this for a month and then we work on the Noah coloring book that I'm going to be starting on Thursday streams tomorrow. We'll move that over to Wednesday until we get through because I'm going to be starting a Noah graphic novel on the Thursday, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, we'll be working on this for a few weeks. And then at some point, we'll come back to Zamo. So, anyways, so we have Zamo has introduced, quote, the lazy monkey, yours truly. Um, Zamo, it was kind of a running gag that Zamo would point out that humans share 98% of their DNA with chimpanzees, and Zamo insisted she shared 98% of her DNA with T-Rex. It's a little questionable, but oh, and the other thing is Zamo claimed to be an anthropologist, so therefore Zamo knew better about humans, which part of that is also a joke about a long time ago, back in the 90s, I was an anthropology major, and oh dear Lord, never mind. Um, so, but it was kind of my jokes about how messed up anthropology is, or can be in certain circumstances, whatever. Um, so, anyways, what have I drawn myself doing here? This is one of those things where once I finish the panel, it may still not be entirely clear, unless you have worked in the recording studio. But I am trying myself miking a kick drum. So, if you've ever noticed, kick drums have a little hole in the front. Partly that's to let air out, so it's for acoustic reasons, but also in the recording studio, that's where you shove a microphone in. Uh, see, if I did draw the actual mic stand and not just the boom arm of it, it is well and truly faded. But we will add in the boom arm because that's kind of important. And I would be propping myself up on my wrist. So, yeah. I don't know what non-photo blue pencil I used for this, but holy crap, it's very, very faint. As opposed to the one I use right now. Oh, and it would help if that was actually in sorry. This is the one I use now, and you can actually see it. That one is, like, crazy pale. I think I'm trying to remember back because now, with art supplies, some things aren't available anymore. If I'm not mistaken, that was something that actually visually looked like a number 2 pencil, but blue, whereas this is a type of a pencil crayon, so that's probably why it's so, whatever. Um, but yeah, so I guess there was school and some music biz toadying is what Zamo is saying as the caption to this. So I around that time in my life, let me draw a little. Usually you put a blanket inside a kick drum. Um, so in 2008, I went to BCIT, which for anyone not from Vancouver area, that is like a trade and technical school in Burnaby, BC, one of the suburbs of Vancouver. And what I took there is called new media design. So there was some audio, there's some video. It was a lot of like web stuff. I thought I was going to be a web designer at the time. um, but I kind of really fell in love with audio at the time in the one class we had on that. And I was like the most hardcore, like we had an assignment. This was back when Nine Inch Nails had like remix.nin.com, and like we actually had an assignment for that where because Trent had put up what they call stems for remix, like separated the recordings of the instruments out so that you could take them and screw with them. That was actually one of our assignments, and it's for only. Um, anyway, so I got really into doing that. And it kind of reminded me, when I was a kid, I'd wanted to be a rock star, all this sort of crap. And I also had a bit of a crisis at the time. We won't get into everything related to it, but where I was kind of going like, well, I was a grown ass adult, but I was kind of like, what do I want to be with when I grow up? Um, and I kind of thought, I really do want to give the songwriting thing a try. So I was making my own music in Pro Tools. Like I got on my old MacBook, I got Pro Tools. I think at that point it would have been Pro Tools 9, Pro Tools 8 or Pro Tools 9, because what I have upstairs now is Pro Tools 10, but that was a computer from 2011. And Pro Tools 10 came out in 2011. So anyways, I did that. Ended up, I was going to go to the Art Institute, had a recording. Let's bring that down there. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit better. Do we want it zoomed in? Maybe we want things a little more zoomed in, and then I'll try and remember to shift the paper. Anyways, so towards the end of my time at BCIT, because it was a 1-year program, I had gone to like an information session at the Art Institute, which was actually pretty close by there. But then I also heard about this place, Nimbus, which was teaching audio record. There's also Pacific Audio Visual Institute, was the other audio school in Vancouver. Anyways, I heard, Nimbus, and that was run by Garth Richardson, who Garth is a big time producer, and he produced the thing he's probably most famous for is the very first Rage Against I don't know if it's the first, but like the first famous Rage Against the Machine album, the one with the picture of the burning monk on the cover. Garth produced that. He had mixed or he did engineering of some sort on Red Hot Chili Peppers' Mother's Milk. I think he mixed some of it. If not, he was doing recording. Anyways, so I heard about that. Now, the thing is, I had learned in other situations, sometimes you have somebody who knows what they're talking about but can't teach it. So I was a little concerned about that, but I had heard there was like some, I forget what it was. It was associated, I think, with one of some sort of industry conference or whatever, but where Garth was giving a talk on something to do with audio engineering. And this is like in March. I had already applied and I think been accepted um, to Art Institute, but and I was going to be starting that in the spring. Anyways, March, I heard this talk that Garth gave, and I was like, okay, this guy can teach. He not just knows what he's doing, but he can actually explain it. So, anyways, I changed course. I applied for Nimbus. I wasn't the first intake because that had started that year in January, but I was in the second intake that started in April. By the way, yes, I am drawing myself making out with an individual we won't name. Not Garth. It's not Garth. Somebody else I knew from the business. Um, I have not drawn him accurately either. But anyways, so I graduated from my program at BCIT in like the first week of April, and April 22nd, I think, is when I started at Nimbus for my audio engineering and music production. I was there for a year. And in those days, it was a small enough school. Garth was around a lot. We also met like Randy Staub, who I think Randy's the one who mixed Metallica's Black album. He mixed like a whole lot of Nickelback when Nickelback was getting big. I think he's mixed. No, Mike Fraser's the one who mixed AC/DC. Anyways, a whole lot of big time guys in Vancouver. I'm trying to tell, what the hell did I draw down there? I can't tell. Anyways, it's an audio fader. We'll just ignore what the hell I have drawn because I can't tell if that's supposed to be a dick or a heart or whatever. We're going to ignore that. Um, we're just going to assume that says Vox for vocals. Anyways, so I'm like losing track in my own story. Sorry. But anyways, I went from BCIT, I went to audio engineering and worked on my own project Maclu. Kind of the whole purpose of that, I think. I think we've got like joints and anyways, we're gonna ignore that and we're just gonna draw faders. um anyways, so the funny thing is I actually never worked as an audio engineering. I got a job for an indie label, very small. It was basically me and my boss, but we had a few he had a few bands on the roster, and then anyways, that's a whole other story. Um and I was working on my own stuff. Um my project got Maclu ended up doing not bad on college radio in like 2010 to 2012 in Canada. I was not a good live performer though, so that was kind of a problem. Uh, yeah. Anyways, like, that's a whole other thing. By the time I was doing this reboot thing in 2013, I mean I don't have what time of the year it was done, but I think I had already no, I don't think I had quit in favor of stand-up comedy. Not that I did a lot of stand-up comedy, but I did like open mics and then I got into podcasting and stuff. That was more 2014. Um, so I think at this point, um, definitely in 2013. I was, like, trying to get my health in order, and I was trying to figure out what, was I gonna continue in the music biz? Because if I really wanted to, then I kinda needed to figure out a better way, like, a way to get stuff that was gonna earn, royalties and airplay and whatnot. Anyways, it's a whole other, uh yeah, it's a whole other thing, but I was kind of I think I if I'm not mistaken, I was probably at this point trying to figure out, was I gonna stay in the music business? Was I gonna move on? If I wasn't gonna stay, what the hell was I gonna do? Was I gonna go back to doing visual arts? These are stories for another day. But it's a bit of a confusing time in my life. Uh, I'm also trying to draw this asshole in a way that he won't be recognizable to anyone who knew me at that point. Although I think really there's very few people from that period of my life that I still have any kind of contact with. And most of them weren't in the Vancouver music scene. So they wouldn't, yeah. Or the industrial music scene, because there's, dealings with guys in industrial bands who are from, all over. Um, so, uh, this individual used to scream a lot. I actually I wrote a few songs about him. There was one that I always kind of chuckle about called Mr. Hyde. Oh, Mr. Hyde, come out and play and lie right down to get your own way. Everything's exact I'm trying to remember, there were 3 verses of it. Everything's exactly as you like. No need to run off and hide. Just come on in and come on inside. Everyone can say you've seen the lights. Do, do, do. Um, oh, yeah, if I remember, I probably won't, but if I remember, I may put a link to that song. I probably won't though, but if you look up Maclu, Maqlu, Mr. Hyde, there is stuff like actually had jam space rehearsal video of it. Anyways, um, but the actual song I layered a lot of distortion on. So by the end, I was kind of in like this snarling kind of demon voice. Which is why I'm not going to sing the whole song because I kind of tend to want to do that, and then my throat hurts for days afterwards. But what I was actually doing is I took it and processed the original vocal where I got the nastiest, snarliest tone I could out of my actual throat, and then I ran it through like layer of heavy distortion. Take that, run that through another layer of heavy distortion, so you get like 6 or 7 lines of I don't know what the hell is trying to decipher what on earth I have there. Unless it's this individual putting his wedding ring in his pocket, but that's not what it looks like. I don't know. Why don't we just ignore whatever the hell that was that I can't decipher my own drawing? It looks like a hand in a pocket, but it's not entirely clear. We'll just make it a speaker cone. Let's make it a speaker cone. So I guess today's helpful tip, folks, is if you're going to draw something and then forget it exists for over a decade and then bring it out and suddenly redraw it, it would be very helpful if you made your original drawings very clear as to what the hell they're supposed to be. It's like, why am I drawing this guy's hand in his pocket? Like, this is somebody who I'd like to make it very clear since I am making reference to this. At the time, I was under the impression he was divorced, and when I found out he was not, that's when I stopped having interactions with him. Anyways, there's a lot of that sort of thing that happens in, all over, but particularly the entertainment industry. Not all of them, though. There were definitely some guys I knew from that time who were very loyal to their wives. Some of them even successful guys who had opportunities and chose not to take them, but that was definite they were rare exceptions. We'll just put it that way. Uh, not till certain individuals drop dead. As far as I know, he's still on Twitter. I mean, I blocked him a long time ago. I don't know, but I have heard that he is still on Twitter. So all the worst people on the world on the planet are on Twitter. I have a Twitter account too. So, far be it from me to cast aspersions on Twitter users because I am one of them. But you know what I mean. Anyways, one of those things where it's like I was looking at this the other week, and part of me was like, do I actually want to do this? Maybe I'll redraw it. And I'm like, no, you know what? I think it would be more honest if we obviously I've just made a couple changes to it there, but it's like I think we need to ink this the way it actually was drawn to the extent that we can decipher them. I think that's supposed to be a joint up there, but um, I just drew it as a second fader. But in order to make it honest, it's like okay, just take what you drew, and if you can decipher it. um. Anyways, and that was a very in some ways, I guess wherever you go, there you are. So I can't say I was a completely different person back then, but I was not. I behaved in some ways. I behaved very differently then. I like to think I've changed for the better. Slightly less stupid, I guess, than I used to be. That would be another way to do it. Uh, I will say, I'm getting weird. Okay, I'm trying to give, you know, give myself the appropriate boobage, but kind of go like, now it's starting to get weird. It's starting to look like a big lump. We'll probably fix that in Photoshop. In fact, let's draw an arrow. Oh, yeah, and none of it was. Never mind. I am gonna. What I was starting to say, I was thinking of like the Mr. Hyde and whatnot. I am in the process of trying to figure out how best to use OBS for live streaming. And I know at that point that's something where you can have multiple sources and whatnot. So then I could, pull up and bring up the audio for something like that. Um, Probably catch myself a DMCA strike from my own account because I think I have to, one of these days, I have to go into, it used to be called CD Baby. I think it's called Artist Direct now. But anyways, there's some old stuff where I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll just take this shit down. Yeah, anyways, I think he's also looking at this thing here. I think Zamo's looking at a globe of the world, and that's what Zamo's seething about. Um, yeah, yeah. So then, if that goes Baja, yeah, okay. I think that is what that is. That does look like Florida and Baja, Mexico. So, anyways. Um, yeah, and there's Hawaii. And I guess that would be Africa. So, no, anyways, whatever. Um, This is like me trying to narrate and explain things from a long time ago that probably no one well, A, no one cares. I don't even care anymore, like, at this point, I I wouldn't seek out contact with this individual, but if I bumped into him in the street, and assuming we recognized each other, I'd just be like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Oh, good. Yeah, good. You're good? I'm good. Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's never see each other again." You know, like, whatever. It's not water under the bridge now, but you kinda also go like, "Yeah, forgiveness doesn't have to mean reconciliation." And just be like, "Okay, well, that happened. That was a different time. We don't do that now. We don't talk to, that individual anymore," but whatever. Um, it's kind of funny because generally speaking, yeah, I don't care about a lot of this stuff that mattered so much to me at that time. Um, so it's kind of funny. I don't know. So I think it's kind of interesting to look back on your old art event, every so often if you have old stuff. I used to habitually take old sketchbooks, rip the pages out, tear them into pieces, throw them in the recycling bin. Um, so I don't actually have a lot of stuff from, say I think I have like 2 sketchbooks from high school, and I do have the sketchbook I had. I was at Emily Carr's foundation year very briefly. Like by mid-September, I had already registered for our January classes at UBC to leave. But, anyways, I do have a sketchbook from that. I've debated at times whether I should do, like, a sketchbook tour of it. Just like I think actually at some point I had filmed a sketchbook tour, not really a sketchbook, but a portfolio tour of the portfolio or what I could find of it, my admissions portfolio for Emily Carr and from 1996. Um, don't have all of it. There's definitely stuff where I was like, okay, I know there was other stuff that at some point I have thrown away, but we kind of interesting. I think I started to record a tour of it at some point, and then I just, I got to be a little rambly, and then I was just like, well, well, you can already tell I'm a little rambly when I start talking about the olden days. Part of it's like, okay, what do you even say about things from that long ago, right? Yeah, anyway, we have Zamo holding one of my old Maclu CDs. And Zamo being an iguana, I do draw her. We'll see later on where I tend to draw Zamo up on her hind legs walking around. But even that, a full-grown iguana, well, there's no point in gesturing, but this is 9 by 12. Um, so that gives you a sense of width. A full-grown adult female iguana, I think she lived for about 10 years. And at the end of her life, I think what they call snout vent length, so like vent meaning cloaca, in between the rear legs. Um, from the tip of her nose to her cloaca, snout vent length, I believe, was 21 inches, so almost 2 feet long, and then 5 feet of tail. Like, um, Zalmo, I tend to assume, would be yeah, about a foot tall. Zamo's not as full grown, right? Zamo's not quite juvenile, but like bigger than that. But there are definitely drawings I used to do in this comic where Zamo would be sitting on Georgie's shoulder, and the top of Zamo's head would be kind of, you know, above Georgie's ear or whatnot. Um, so, I mean, they're big lizards. Zamo is not really drawn to scale. Um, anyways, why did I mention that? um, yeah, so far this stream is turning out to be it's kind of like a nostalgia fest, but also kind of a mess. Because I didn't really plan what I was gonna say on stream. It's like, "Yeah, well, we're gonna ink and we'll just wing it." I think, when we get to page 2, yes, this is the only page that really talks about, quote, quote, "the lazy monkey," i.e. the cartoonist, i.e. me. After this, we start talking about, the characters, so then it's a little less, kinda going like I think I'm gonna kind of black in the background a little bit here, uh, just to give some texture because the rest of the page is pretty light. Uh, well, that's definitely some texture. Big glob of black ink. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. Talking about your art takes some practice, and especially when there's like aspects of Zommel that were semi autobiographical, although it was very fictionalized. Like off the top of my head, there was one. It was actually based on a car accident I actually had, where I had made a right turn, and the guy who hit me, I think, well, he was making a left turn at the same intersection, and honestly, I don't think he had the right of way, or he didn't wait for a gap. And then he got out and he was like screaming at me, you know, about you're dumb broad not looking where you're going. And I'm thinking, like, okay, you hit me right smack in the middle of my rear driver's side door. So, like, you clearly did not have a gap. And generally speaking, like, he did not have the arrow or anything like that. While I'm doing this, I'm just gonna add some darker up on the top thing. Anyways, I based on what the guy was freaking out at me about and all this, there was then a comic where Georgie gets sideswiped or T-boned almost, Unfortunately, it wasn't like a high speed thing because we were both coming from a stop. Um, but anyways, Georgie gets hit and then Zamo comes out and just starts attacking the guy, you know. And Georgie then is sitting there going like twiddling her thumbs while Zalmo's like clawing the guy's face and all this, and he's like saying, "Get it off me, get it off me!" And then she's like, "Hey, I'm just a dumb broad. I have no idea what's going on around me." you know? Anyways, so there's some semi autobiographical stuff, but it's all fairly fictionalized, except for this one page. Anyways, I like that she makes her own awful noise too, as Maclu. Yeah, because at that point, I mean, the other thing I think at that point is I'd been making industrial noise, and like experimental like cut ups and weird sort of sounds, but I was kind of later in 2013 in the summer, and this may have already been drawn at that point. But I was starting to go like, okay, what did I get? What did I want to? What kind of music had I wanted to make? And it was like, okay, well, I grew up listening to Guns N' Roses and Hanoi Rocks, and like that sort of stuff. Definitely wasn't what I ended up making. So um, I think I was kind of making jokes about myself at that point. Like, okay, I make unlistenable crap. Whatever. We finally get a side view of Zomo. she's got an armpit stripe like so many iguanas. By the way, this thing hanging down from her chin is called a dewlap, for anyone who's not familiar with iguanas. It's a thin flap of skin. They use it for basking. So, my iguana, if she was calm, it would kind of be relaxed against there. But then if she was annoyed, she would um, pull it down, and then they look bigger, right? But also, if they're sunning themselves in the window, she would pull it down because that's really thin skin. So um, it's able to heat up and help the lizard heat up and thermoregulate. So, anyways, that's what that is. And I think Zamo's head looks a little weird. I'll have to have a look at some of that other stuff. Uh, It's definitely going to be a bit of a stylistic jump from the 2009 to this. But then, even if I had inked this in 2013, like, the style overall remains the same, but there would be little tweaks um, as things change, practice and whatnot, or out of practice, as the case may be. So, yeah, we're almost at an hour and we still have 3 more squares on this one. Anyways. And here's where I make fun of, well, I say college radio twerps. I had a college radio show. I was on CITR Radio, 101.9 FM in Vancouver, CITR.ca. I was a DJ at CITR off and on for 15 years. Not quite, 14. Because I think I first went on air 2002 to 2006. And then I took a break and I came back in 2009 when I was finished at BCIT. Um, and I have no idea what this individual's hairstyle is supposed to look like. Is kind of hard to tell. Um, but anyways, I then was on air with my show is The Vampire's Ball, and it ran again from 2009 till um, April 30th, or the last week of April in 2015. So, anyways, and the funny thing is, I'm actually, and I saw this not that long ago, but I think the Wikipedia page for CITR mentions notable DJs over the years from CITR. Of course, Nardwar is the most famous of them. Um, I used to know Nardwar. Nardwar is an awesome dude. It's kind of fun to see the profile he's managed to build on social media, which isn't surprising because he's always had a good hustle and whatnot. But it's pretty cool to see. It's like, oh, I think he has like 2 million followers on Instagram or something. So it's like, oh, dude is doing awesome for himself. That's fantastic. And he deserves it. He's great. Anyways, but somewhere in the list of the notable DJs, it says Pura Draculea from the Vampire's Ball or host of the Vampire's Ball. I'm like, what? And that it still says that all these years later, unless it's just changed in the last few months. That was kind of like, really? But hey, I'll take it. It was a fun show. I kind of miss doing my radio show. Where I live now, there aren't any campus community stations. There was, I think, until about 2019, but there's none now. And I debated, it's like, okay, well, if I want to play other people's music, like there's Mixcloud, but I had actually at some point had a podcast on Mixcloud, and it's like get very few listens for the kind of stuff I do, or did. Um, but It's like, "Oh, what's this? Live 365," and you look and realize it's like $500 a month. Like, and that's all, like, music licensing and all that, so it's like, "Okay, well, this sort of stuff, frankly, is why piracy is a thing." For a while, I think you used to be able very briefly, I think, Spotify let you kind of do a show where you would make a playlist and you would intersperse, spoken word. So, like, where you were doing an announcement, but, like, the licensing, music rights part was all handled um, by Spotify because they do pay royalties and whatnot, right? I know the royalties are low. I get it too. I mean, not that I get a lot of plays on Spotify, but I remember seeing, like, statements, when I used to log into, CD Baby more regularly. I haven't logged in ages. Um, but you used to see things where it's like, okay, like, it's like less than half of a penny for per play. So I get why people are mad, but at the same time, you kind of go like, yeah, yeah, my stuff used to get pirated. I think every so often I'll still get like a new Google alert for Maclu. And granted, the name was from like Babylonian witchcraft text or curses sort of text. Actually, it's Sumerian. I think I had a whole ramble about. Yeah, actually, I think the last scuttlebutt I posted like a month ago because I was gonna start doing scuttlebutt again, and then I decided not to. But anyways, that was. I went on a little ramble about the Sumerian language, and anyways, whatever. But that's where that comes from. But there's a text called Maclu text, which is like deciphered by some German archaeologist in like 1857 or something, 1854, something like that. But then, like there's like a metal band, I forget which band it was called, but the song is called Kuduro Maklu, and that would come up on my Google alerts. I'm trying myself looking like Diamanda Galas, but I used to look like Diamanda Galas, do my hair in a similar manner. Didn't have the vocal range of Diamanda, but I had the weird, like, what the fuck is wrong with you angle that was somewhat similar. Anyways, so mostly what comes up on my Google alerts for Maclu is like pagan crap and black magic and stuff that, whatever. But every so often, I will still get where it's like some like music sharing, i.e. piracy, um, website from Russia, and they'll be talking, it'll be like Maclu, Blood Black Haze, Maclu, Blood, Maclu, Malfeasance, Maclu, the Maclu Tarot. And I was like, they like me. They really, really like me. They still know I exist. Every so often I've thought about like going when I get one of those things going like, should I like make an account and post and say, okay, yeah, I don't do that anymore, but like I make comics about alcoholic punk rock rats. Come check out my YouTube channel. I don't think I suspect that would not be the same audience, but anyways. But yeah, anyways, my point is you get piracy is like kind of, well, the saying that I see more and more in terms of like software companies where they're like trying to make you pay a monthly subscription for software that you used to be able to just pay once. Um, the saying I see a lot is if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing, something like that. Now, I'm not going to advocate that point of view, but let's just say I completely understand it. And if somebody wants to pirate old Mackley stuff, like whatever, that's fine. I actually might actually still be there, but for a while, like one of the sites I saw was actually in English language, so I could see what they were talking. But it was somebody who had heard my album, The Mackley Tarot, back when I had a band camp, and then was commenting like, "I like," because you used to be able to have full-length previews. I guess you still do, I don't know, I haven't used Bandcamp in 10 years? Um, anyways, there the guy was commenting that, he hadn't been able to, find it since it disappeared from Bandcamp. Yeah, because I deactivated my account, you know? I deleted all my stuff off of Bandcamp 'cause I forget why, but I was pissed off at Bandcamp for something. Um, and it wasn't making me any money anyways. So then what I decided to do is I actually posted all my old content for free downloads on maclu.com. As you can see there, MAQLU. So if you happen to be interested in like obnoxious grindy noise, things that sound like peacocks puke fucking. um, if you're into that sort of stuff, maclu.com, it's still there. I think I still have the free downloads up somewhere. It's probably like maclu.com/extras or .html, or I don't know, but um, I did have everything where I just posted it for free. It's like, well, if somebody wants to go on to iTunes and like, you know, pay for it, fine. But if somebody wants to just listen to it, I mean, there is a YouTube channel, MAQLU, Maclu. I do have not all my stuff, but I have some stuff up there. Weird videos I made and stuff that you could listen on there for free, or you could, just trying to think. I think, yeah, I don't think they let sharks have noses per se, but they have like sensory whatever around their nose. Anyways, um, so anyways, that stuff's all there. Um, so I haven't. I think the first time I got pirated by the Russians back in first when did the first EP come out? 2010. I think in certainly by 2011, my name was showing up on like mp3.ru, I think was the site at the time. And, hey, my boss and I used to go and grab material from there. So like it's like, well, I can't complain if I'm doing the same shit. Anyways, so yeah, we used to get pirated. We in turn were pirates. So it's like, well, that's the cycle. That's the circle of life, right? Um, but generally speaking, I didn't let it bother me. I knew some artists would like really lose their shit about that. Um, I was just like, well, somebody's listening, and maybe they'll, if they're in Russia, they're probably never going to come to a concert. They're probably not, and I not to harp on Russia because they would have traffic from all over the planet going to those sites. But probably somebody who's going to seek that out probably wasn't going to buy your stuff anyways. So it's not like you're really losing a customer. Um, you know, um, but my attitude was kind of like, yeah, whatever. Other people would like lose their shit about it. But and that, you know, anyways, I'm kind of it's a bit of a ramble, but the point is I kind of don't care. That said, when I get my books out, I hope that people will actually buy them. But you know what? I have heard that there are ways, even with Amazon KDP, to do like a digital version of a graphic novel or whatnot and have it look right. But I've heard loads of people say that it's like really buggy and sometimes things get all jumbled and all this sort of stuff to the point where it's like, well, maybe I think I'm not going to bother with digital versions and just be like, if you want it, pay the money, get the physical book, print on demand, and just do it that way. Um, and I mean, hey, even with physical books, definitely get sometimes where somebody has a lot of time on their hands or is very determined or whatever. One person orders a copy of the book and then they like scan it and put the PDF from the scan up online. Somebody really wants to do that, then they're going to, right? I guess the 3 dots is to show it wasn't over, but yeah, it's kind of watermarks, it's kind of blood, it's kind of hair, whatever. So there's the first page of this little reboot that I've been blathering about. So, well, you know what? We'll scan this real quick like this, and then we're gonna put this under. I've got like a little riser thing that my laptop is on, and we will put it under there, and we will start on the next one. Next page, and I am going to put that pen in the water to soak, and I'm going to have a drink of water. So you may hear glug, 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 glug. Sorry. When I get OBS figured out, hopefully in the next couple weeks, then I think they have a button on that for muting your mic. I've been meaning to watch tutorials on that for a while, and I just haven't gotten around to it, but we're making progress because I actually watched a video on how it is that you would use OBS and set things up. Still not actually doing it, but we'll call that research. And this nib after an hour is like super clogged, so I'm going to switch nibs. I may regret switching nibs, but there we go. So now we get from Zamo explaining about the lazy monkey who draws the cartoon to Zamo explaining about Zamo and the other comics. This, I think what I had intended, so I always used to draw like the Zamo the Destroyer, Pura D, copyright 2013 or whatever. I would always put that sort of in the middle of the comic. So if somebody tried, even in Noah, when I was doing it digitally, I had that right in the middle. Makes it, in theory, slightly harder to rip off without having that there. Because this is going to end up being a print book, I mean, I'm just going to outline the box, but yeah, we'll figure something out in Photoshop later. Obviously, initially, my plan was I was going to ink all of these and then post one a week on my site, so they would be separate comics, but we're not doing it that way. So anyways, I'm going to just slowly bump that up because then I can rest my ribs against my table. All right. So Zamo, I've been busy too working on stuff in my secret lab. The Zamo voice is a little bit similar to the voice when I was doing Ricky B. Rat as a podcast. A little bit similar to Miles. Miles is a little more near, like that, and Zamo's a little more like that. Because you think about the vocal cord size difference. Anyways, it's a joke that Zamo had a lab in Georgie's crawl space. And Zamo had acquired this bullfrog Hoppy that we're going to see in the next frame at the local pond, and Hoppy was convinced that Zamo is like the Messiah. It is a whole very bizarre lore kind of thing. Anyways, so Zamo used to, I don't know exactly what kind of horrible experiment Zamo did on Hoppy, but definitely there's some hint of electro, like zapping Hoppy or whatever. But some of the stuff I look at from this, but even like had a more recent project called The Nick White Show. That was YouTube, where I had like Barbie dolls and whatnot. And then I would do voiceovers and all that. And some of the stuff, when I go back and look at those, like, oh my, whoa. Like, that was pretty crazy extreme, super vulgar and whatnot, which is kind of funny because now I don't really do that kind of not that I have any objection to it, I just that's not where my head's at for writing now. Um, I still watch a lot of really rude, obnoxious, comedy, I just tend to be a little more kinder I don't know about kinder, gentler, but a little more soft, perhaps. Maybe I'm just getting old, I don't know. Um, but anyway, so, like, you look at some of the stuff where it's almost like experimenting on Hoppy, I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, yeah, that's a little it's eh, it's not nice, Samo, it's not nice. Hoppy considers you his best friend." If memory serves, the lore is that Samo acquired Hoppy, was hanging out at the pond at the local park, and telling them about how Samo is a superior being to all other creatures, and Hoppy assumed that this meant a superior frog of sorts, and Zamo gets very offended at being referred to as a frog. Anyways, and then we have these, rabbits in cages. I used to live in Richmond, the nature parks there were all overrun with, rabbits, so that's kind of the joke, I guess, here, is that Zamo is, like, finding them and taking them home for lab experimentation. Not that I can't remember there ever really being any, like it's not like Zamo was doing, like, vivisection or, like, horrible stuff like that. I think it was always, like, someone was trying to brainwash them into becoming an army to help Zamo take over the world or something like that. So, psychological experiments, not, and if I have this, comic as the coda in the book, then, by that point, people will have seen Zamo making references to, you know, the secret basement lab and know that it's, not quite the horror show that one would expect. It's basically a place for Zamo to hide out from Georgie, but still. Yeah, my perspective's off. If we're seeing things go up that way, we should see the top. You know what? I'm just gonna whatever. And I'll just make it correct ish. One of those sort of comics where some of my friends who know me now from, church and stuff ask what kind of art I make, and then I just kind of answer in as vague as possible a manner. Oh, I'm gonna be putting together a book of my old cartoons featuring this iguana that does like that, steals bunnies from the park and puts them in cages in her secret basement lab. Same old, same old. It's like, I do graphic novels. I tend to be of the opinion that usually 99% of the time when somebody asks you, an artist, what kind of work they do, generally speaking, they're either just making polite conversation and they're not actually ever going to look at the thing, or they want like somebody who's going to like paint a portrait of their kid or something. As soon as they hear graphic novelist, then they go, "Oh, okay. This person is not going to do a family portrait for me for $20." So, it tends to work. The problem tends to solve itself. Move this back down a little bit like that. I'm just drawing in the panel boundaries as we go. It's like crazy how tight. I must have assumed that the lines were going to be very thin. Now, if I do like Ricky B, the rock and roll rat, my boundaries between panels are like that thick. But, it's one of those things where some aspects of style stay the same and some change. Panel boundaries, that changes. It's like there were a couple years with Zama where I did like vignetting, so I would do in the corners, I would kind of like round them out. And then those years I did have thicker boundaries, but we're not going to worry about vignetting on these. 'Cause generally speaking, I have drawn them densely enough. I don't have space. Okay. Like that, I will have to rewrite because what it says is the characters were the churchmen's, um, but and that was like kind of a born again family characters, um, where Zama was always kind of in conflict with the matriarch of the churchman family. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to see. Okay, that's Zama's hand holding a map. Okay, then I need my thinner. But anyways, the churchmans had a whole bunch of kids, and Zalma would be annoyed by the noise of the kids playing or whatnot. They were supposed to be the next door neighbors for Georgie. But at the same time, Mrs. Churchman was a stay at home mom who baked and made apple pies, and Zalma was always trying to like alternatively like break into the house and steal the pies or like suck up and get given one or whatever. Um, So, and sometimes Zalmo would get the better of Mrs. Churchman, and sometimes Mrs. Churchman would get the better of Zalmo. We're back to the glass pen. Mm, okay. Glass pen isn't wanting to cooperate with me. It'll let me back to the thinnest, well, thinnest of these kind of pens that has a little, I guess it's almost like a reservoir in the sense that the little brass tip on top kind of traps ink. Um, so it takes longer to run out of ink. Anyways, so we've got a map of the neighborhood that Zamo is holding. See, so there's that's probably going to disappear and make no sense, but anyways. So Zama's got this little piece of paper. Stupid condos there. I always envisioned Georgie had a corner lot. So the Churchmans live next door to Georgie. And then there's this pool park school community center. Georgie has a tree here. Churchman has a house there. Actually, Churchman's had a garden in the backyard. Now that I'm actually remembering, the Churchman's also had a deck on the backyard. So this is obviously not to scale, but that almost looks like a row of coffins, but whatever. So Dave and Bob, they were the gay couple that lived behind Georgie's house. And they used to have, well, how about the first thing a few years back, Dave and Bob gave up on the whole gardening thing because Zamo used to go and raid. So I think switch nibs again, I think. Zamo's tail will be dragging behind her, but I think this line, well, we'll see. The line is probably going to make it a little too difficult to make out, but we'll see about what we can draw here that will make it clear that it's a garden and Zamo is stealing. Last night's stream, I was brainstorming for the calendar project that I'm going to be starting with Noah's Archipelago, and then I'm going to do another one afterwards with Ricky B, the rock and roll rat. But I think my favorite drawing out of what I drew last night was Noah in his garden doing taking selfies. So, like I have a big garden. Honestly, I don't use it as much as I should. Um, but it's a little bit influenced by one of my aunts. Was always into gardening, and she lived in Winnipeg. She lives in Winnipeg, still does. Um, but her entire backyard since I don't know the '60s. It's not a huge lot. In fact, I think square footage wise, I think she's probably got half the lot size that I have. 'Cause mine is kind of long and skinny, but in her neighborhood, everything's like short and square. Um, anyways, she and her husband always um like there's no backyard. What it is it's there's a small like concrete patio and then the rest is all garden, like veggie garden. The old style victory garden type of thing. And back in the day, um I don't know so much now, but when her kids were growing up and whatnot, like that garden provided about 75%, maybe 90%, even of all the produce that they had. Because, she would can and preserve, she would make spaghetti sauce, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously during the summer, um, they'd eat fresh right out of the garden. So even though I'm kind of lazy with my garden, but that is sort of an ambition I have, and there have been some years. Last year, I didn't do very much with my garden, but, there have definitely been years. I've got, I think I've got, like, 10 garden beds, 6 that are, 3 foot by 9 foot, and 3 that are, like, 3 foot square. But, there's definitely some summers since I've been here where, you know, pretty much all my produce came from my garden during the season. A lot of salad greens and stuff like that. Haven't been as on top of it the last couple years, but always ends up being a little bit, my characters in different comics because Noah's Archipelago, Noah has, wrecked his mother-in-law's garden lawn in order to put in veggie gardens and all that sort of stuff and a little orchard and all that. Kind of the life. It's a major pain in the ass though, but it is worth it, I think. So it's kind of funny to look back and there's Georgie had actually I should add that Georgie had garden beds and Dave and Bob used to, but anyways, I'm trying to decipher what the hell. Oh, I see. Okay, there's a bulldozer. That's what that is, or a caterpillar, whatever. Oh, I suspect that pill picked up. Need to update my iCal schedule so it knows that I'm actually still live streaming at 8 o'clock. This is your pool and a hot tub, so there. Now we get a back view of Zamo. A little tympanic membrane, armpit stripes, very stripes being very fashionable with iguanas apparently. All right, now let's outline those panels. I must say Nowadays, we talk there's the whole meme about, the Karen hairdo and whatnot. But I've noticed in my world, you tend to have instead of, like, the short in the back and the spiky up top, the Karens of my world, not that any of them are actually called Karen, tend to have this, like, short bangs and, like, chin length bob. Because in Noah's archipelago, Noah's mother-in-law, Agnes has that hairdo, Mrs. Churchman had it back then. Uh, actually, Mrs. Churchman also tended to wear, um, a turtleneck very similar to Agnes. Uh, this being one of the Churchman kids whose eyes are being definitely, when I look back on this, the depiction of the Churchmans is really kinda unfair. That was where my head was at the time. But of course, it says there that these are buff guys, but I'm not really drawing them as buff guys because they are tiny. Now I have to pick up and look at what the hell. Oh, Speedos. I see. A fat dude in Speedos. That's what it's like. What the hell is that even? It's like, oh, Speedos thing is kind of still relevant today because it's a running joke that Noah from Noah's Archipelago spends the summer in his pool, in his mother-in-law's pool in a Speedo. So, I guess that guy's scratching his balls or something. Yeah. And the last little drawing we will draw tonight, so we can close in on 2 hours. is the same individual in the same little cab. Of the same caterpillar. It's not a bulldozer, it's like a bucket, whatever. I have no idea what these things are called. It's not a bulldozer. Bulldozer has that, right? This is like it's got a bucket arm. As soon as I click end stream, that's when it'll come to me as to what the hell this thing is called. All right, so we just have to divide these and then we will have a kind of a read through what we've drawn. I will say Mrs. Churchman resembles Agnes the most from the side because from the front, whoops, from the front, her hair is kind of different and goes out in a really weird, bowed out kind of way. Um, very briefly, from the front, Mrs. Churchman's hair kind of does this. So her ears in the middle, and then she's got her bangs, and then her hair. So she kind of ends up looking like I guess, like a toadstool, you know, face here. She may or may not have been based on, not well, she aspects of her were based on somebody I actually knew. A couple somebodies I actually knew. Um, but not all of them as one person. Anyways, so I'm going to raise this up. There we can see a messy water bowls. This is my leftover ink. Poured a whole bunch in, but I end up pouring it back into the bottle. I'm using Demco waterproof India ink. I used to use Speedball. In fact, I have a brand new box of the Speedball Super Black I haven't even opened yet. Well, I've opened the box, but I haven't opened the bottle. Oh, lovely. Uh, whatever, whatever. Um, my last couple packages of Speedball Super Black. Now, I haven't had the kind where it's vertical like that jar. I've had the kind where it's more trapezoidal, the wider base, and I haven't been happy with the last couple of bottles. That's why I gave this Demco a try, and not sponsored or anything like that. But this stuff is pretty damn good. Reminds me of the way the Speedball ink used to be. Lately, I've found the Speedball, it's either, like, super runny and it comes out almost like a gray color, um, or it's I'm just gonna put that shot glass there to soak. Grr. And then it kind of will slowly ooze down, and then by the time I'm, like, cleaning up afterwards, it's pretty, easy to clean up out of those shot glasses. I just use some, like, there's, like, an orange cleaner you can get at automotive shops that has some grit in it, and that's what I use to clean up my bowls and whatnot, and the shot glass afterwards. Um, these I swish them out until, well, you can see maybe, I don't know, probably not, it just looks dark in the camera, but I've got other nibs in there. And that's I kinda keep them when I'm not using them, I keep them soaking in water. In theory, it stops it from, um, coagulating and drying and hardening, but anyways. So let's have a look at these first couple Zamo pages. I'm just gonna put that one up there on top of the laptop. So we have come on. So this would have been in theory 2013. I'll put a note in the intro to the book that it's done. But so of these, and then we've got 6 more that we will work on starting next week, which this is such a faint non-photo blue. I had trouble a couple times with seeing um, what my drawing had been. Um, oh, yeah, like this is like the old school non-photo blue. You can probably still get those in some places. But definitely what I use now, well, you can see here, it shows up. Um, this still does get knocked out when you scan in black and white. It should now as heavily as I've drawn that, it might, but I have scanned like finished pages of the Ricky B. Rat that were drawn, and if you scan it in black and white, it goes away. You can also, once the ink is dry, you can kind of very gently use a white eraser and lighten it. But anyways, so what we've got here, going back, and like I said at the beginning, this is going to end up being like a coda for because think, if I'm not mistaken, I think in terms of the comic version of Zamo, I believe there were 100, either 163 or 136. So like that's going to fit in one book, no problem. Then this would go at the end. I'd have some intro bonus material and stuff. And then there's like 220 scripts for the podcast version, um, because podcasts are faster to make, and I don't want to say take less effort, but for my particular form of working, they take less effort um, versus drawing. So I will probably take those scripts and then make illustrations of key moments and release them as short story collections. And I don't know. I think the average script length for a Zamo podcast was like 5 to 8 pages. So if I've got 220 of them, like that's going to be several books, right? And I don't know, however many I would do per book, then it's probably going to be, 3 to 4 illustrations, yada yada yada. That's for future live streams. So we'll be working on that. But this would be the coda for the comic collection. So we have Zamo and Zamo. I'm not going to try and do the voice, but Zamo says, "So, been a while, huh?" And we've got 2009 crossed out, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and question mark. Yeah, the lazy monkey who draws this comic claims to have been busy or something for a while. So then we've got me drawing. I don't believe her personally, but there you have it. Busy. Well, I guess there was school that I was referring to earlier with BCIT and Nimbus. Nimbus, by the way, doesn't exist anymore. Unfortunately, it died during the lockdowns because they had a lot of international students coming to study there. And then when Canada had travel really restricted for like 2 or 3 years, actually, um, then they students couldn't get student visas, so and they're yeah. Anyways, so then the school went out of business, unfortunately. It was good when it lasted. I mean, I think I myself and the other very early cohorts, I suspect got the best of it because like I mean, I recorded my first EP there, a couple of EPs there because there, there were a lot of there was open time, and if students didn't book the studios, then anyone could show up and grab it. So I'd be there at like 3 in the morning waiting, and if nobody else showed up, then I would just go hop into Studio A and record and mix and stuff. Anyways, it was fabulous, the first year, and then there were more students, then there was less and less studio time. Anyways, um, so I don't know what it was like after I graduated, but 2009 to 2010, it was fantastic. Actually, probably if you search my name, Pura Draculea, and Nimbus, Nimbus, I think the Vancouver Sun still has a story about Nimbus that has me quoted in it, and there were photos of me. I don't know if I think some of the links might be broken. I had seen some of that stuff last year, and one of the photo links is broken and the other. Anyways, whatever. So school and some music biz toadying. I hear there might be some good stories, but not till certain individuals drop dead. Well, by the time said individuals drop dead in their 80s or whatever, I'll be in my 60s, and I'm in my 40s now, and I don't care anymore. So like probably there won't be any like tell. There's really not much. Anything I could do as a tell all makes me look just as bad. So, um I will say I when the whole Me Too thing came out with the movie industry, I wasn't surprised. I never personally witnessed anything like that in the music industry, but it wouldn't shock me. You know, Mostly what I saw was a whole lot of like screwing around, but everybody being willing and transactional about it is what I saw a lot of. But anyways, um point being, I probably this is as much of the stories as we're gonna see. You got somebody blowing rails off of the faders, some ass grabbing, some, you know, meltdown screaming, etc. Anyways, Zamo then says, I don't know why just certain individuals. I, for one, think the whole species should drop dead, but I guess that's not happening yet. She makes her own awful noise too, has Maclu. Well, I guess it's not that bad. Just nothing about iguanas. Don't know who'd listen. It's almost very narcissistic about the iguana thing. So yeah. Anyways, um, maybe we'll come down a little closer. So we have, mind you, when I was drawing, everything was kind of zoomed in. But if I do it like that, that's a little bigger. Nobody needs to really see the cutting mat that's underneath here. Anyways, don't know who'd listen. College radio twerps, supposedly. Check it out, man. It's like peacocks puke fucking awesome. And then someone says, but they'll play anything. And I drew this. I was still a college radio DJ, so I was kind of poking fun of myself too. Anyways, and someone says, oh well, she'll figure shit out eventually. Me and my Maclu days, the dyed black hair and the heavy goth makeup and stuff. Anyways, assuming the whole learning to kayak thing doesn't get her eaten by sharks first. You know what? The kayak comment. This had to have been done at least in the summer of 2013. July 2nd, 2013, I actually almost died. Was on a kayaking thing. I hadn't adjusted my first kayaking, and so far only kayaking, probably the only ever. But my best friend and I went on it's like a paddling tour of Seashell Inlet where you got a little mini lesson at the beginning and the instructor went with you. I hadn't adjusted the paddles on the like foot pedals on my kayak, that help you steer the thing. I hadn't done that quite correctly. So I fell behind, and then I actually got um, the waves coming in this way and my boat this way because I couldn't steer it properly. And I got knocked over and I got trapped underneath the kayak and everything went black. I mean, before that happened, I had already yelled like, I can't steer. So the instructor was on his way back, but things did go black. So I would have drowned. I guess I did drown, but I got rescued in time. Um, so yeah, that's its own story. But the comment about kayaking, this has to have happened after that incident because I mean, I had wanted to go kayaking before then, so maybe I'm just gonna tidy up this line. And I'm gonna be lazy and do it with a marker. Um, so maybe it could have been drawn, but I really think this was after July 2nd, 2013, and then it's kind of an oblique reference to the fact that I would have gotten myself killed kayaking if it weren't for the instructor coming to rescue my dumbass, and getting there fast enough. Anyway, so if I have brain damage, that's probably why. Yeah, just kidding. I think I had brain damage before then. I think it might be genetic. Anyways, um, so we move on from the first page talking about the cartoonist being an idiot, to Zamo talking about the characters in the neighborhood. I'm gonna also probably gonna fix that tongue. Well, maybe if I do that, that it just makes it look even more like balls. Anyways, so Zamo and anyway, I've been busy too, working on stuff in my secret lab. None of your beeswax, so don't ask. And I've been trying to teach Hoppy to be useful, Hoppy being the bullfrog. I'm finding all sorts of mistakes I made. I'm just gonna do that. Uh, and then Zamo says, "Not working though. It's not working." And then yeah, I'm gonna have to do something with this section. Maybe remove it, pull Hoppy down. I don't know. We'll fix it in Photoshop. The old music industry joke. We'll fix it in the mix. Audio engineers get very pissed off when the clients say that because fixing it in the mix always is far more effort than just doing it right the first time. Anyways, Selmo continues, and I have a couple lab bunnies I stole from the nature park for. You know what? Never mind. Point is, I've been busy too, Mr. Solid Bunny number 4. I think later on we have a few others where they're all like named after like Easter candy chocolate. Anyways, um, so in the next row, things sure changed around the neighborhood the last couple years, and this is the map of what it is now. So we've got Dave and Bob, new guy, um, Churchman's, Georgie, pool slash park slash school slash community center, and stupid condos. Both of which will become relevant. First thing a few years back, Dave and Bob gave up on the whole gardening thing. Hi, Bob. I'm reading your stuff again. Hope that's cool. Bob is seething. The old comics, I seem to remember Bob being very laid back, but clearly had enough. Dug it all up to put a pool and a hot tub in. Hey, that's my berry patch. Stop! I much preferred the garden. The Churchmans are properly horrified, though. They keep ranting about sin and all the buff guys in Speedos. Me, I figure monkeys are hideous in Speedos whether they're buff or not. Right after their pool was done, the city, their pool, like Dave and Bob's pool, the city built one across the street. Bought and tore down all those neighbors' houses across the street, but not the Churchmans. Elmo, of course, not being a fan of the Churchmans, and I realized I forgot to divide that out. And who knows, like, I did do some where I was aligning Zamos with these kind of markers. So I might do that But then, I don't know, I do kinda like the dip pen is a pain in the ass, but there's a certain line quality, like here, the shakiness of it that it's hard to replicate, and I kinda like it. Sorry about the notifications. Next time, Pira, put your phone on silent. Anyways, and we will be using those kind of markers a lot in 2 other projects that we'll be working on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But anyways, so we have our first couple of pages from the aborted reboot of Zamo the Destroyer from 2013, which will go into a book that I will try and get done later this year, um, with all the comics. So, anyways, I know there's a lot of rambling today because I was like trying to explain a project from years ago where I guess I should have just been like, look, I found this comic, this leftover bit from my old web comic. We're inking it now. There's going to be a book. Probably is all I really needed to say. But so next live stream, well, tomorrow night we are doing brainstorming for Noah's Archipelago for a adult coloring book I'm going to be doing. I have 2 options for it, either the A to Z of band life, like, playing in a rock band, or, the A to Z of Noah's jobs. I think it's gonna be the A to Z of Noah's jobs, but, we will be doing some brainstorming sketches and poses for that tomorrow, and then we will start working the following Thursday, we will start working on actual proper art for that. Friday, we are working on Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, a couple more pages. Well, I think one more page of the story, and then we have another ad break, which is kind of the B story, but it comes across like it's interrupting the story until it becomes the story. Anyways, um, and then Monday we will be working on Miles Mars' Pursuit of Happiness. Next Tuesday we are working on art for that calendar project that I did brainstorming for yesterday. Next Wednesday, we'll get a couple more Zamo pages done and so on. And 6:30 p.m. Pacific for all of those shows. So, anyways, thank you for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed this little look into it's kind of my old past, especially the bit where I was rambling at the beginning explaining about all the music crap. But it's also kind of a future project because, you know, um, at the very least, I'm doing something with all this old Zamo the Destroyer material, which will come out in the future, right? So, um, but also if you're into Ricky, particularly Ricky and Miles, this drawing style is very, very well. I mean, obviously, I'm inking it today, so it goes back to so it's how I draw now, but as I said at the beginning, like this is a comic from 2007, and the drawing style is and this one's from 2008, and the drawing style is extremely, extremely the same style that I have for Miles and for Ricky. Noah even I mean Noah's done a little bit differently because the characters all have like bug eyes and only 3 fingers, but even with Noah, there's a lot of similarities, which is funny because all throughout the time that I was doing Zamo, and even until fairly recently, like the last year or so, I always was like, I need to develop a style. I don't have a style. And then I would look at work that I did 20 years ago. It's like, oh, no, I have a style. I just didn't really think of it as a style because it was the work I do. And, other people have style. I don't. I just kind of doodle. Anyways, that's a whole other discussion. So, hope you've enjoyed this kind of a mess of a stream. Reboot of is back to I don't know what are we gonna call this, like back to it's not really Back to the Future. Plus, I'd get sued if I called my book that. But um, so retro reboot, future reboot. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you next time. See you tomorrow or whenever. Bye for now.